Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to yet another One Make series, and for the last time, it's the turn of the Ginetta G55 GT4. Nurburgring, located in the town of Nurburg, plays host to the final round tonight, just over 5.1 kilometers in length with 17 turns. I'm John Dalton, your lead commentator. Alongside me, Jesse Lee, behind the cameras, Ash Bibby, and of course, a big hello to our live stewards. Welcome, everyone.
Hello, John. Hello, everybody watching at home as well. We've got a little bit of business to get taken care of here before we wrap this championship up. A couple of champions left to crown here, and one race very truly in doubt, that one being the silver class. A lot on the line here for round number 5, the decider around the Nurburgring. But before we can get to that, we've got to get to qualifying. And as we've done all season long, the silvers will have the first half of qualifying all by themselves. Then the pros will have the second half to get their laps in as well. The split qualifying, of course, almost sort of required, isn't it, John, when you have so many cars on the track at the same time?
Yeah, required for the sheer number of cars, as you said there, Jesse, and also, of course, for the sheer pace difference. I mean, if you look back to the pre-qualifying that we held at the beginning of the season, 5.4 seconds nearly covered first to last across the grid. Of course, with every season, numbers have dwindled ever so slightly, but still a strong 29 car grid here tonight. So plenty of battles, plenty of cars on track, as you said, Jesse, and qualifying space is going to be all important, especially when people have championships on the line. Silver looking very close indeed. Pro class still not signed, sealed, and delivered yet, and it will become the checkered flag this evening. Matthew Kingston Lee, one of your last cars circulating around, just trying to get those final laps in, getting used to the car, of course, the fuel load, making sure tire pressures are kind of about on par, ready for when the session does switch indeed. And Sim Brothers Racing, Jesse, they are looking super close in their own championship fights. So I'm wondering, will we see a little bit of team orders here tonight, or will they say, let's have some fun, let's put on a good show, and let's race each other all the way to the end? Time will tell.
Yeah, I've not seen the Sim brothers do anything but race each other hard. In fact, not in this championship, but in a previous championship that I was on the call of, I've seen them take each other out. So that was an interesting conversation, surely, behind the scenes. So I don't expect anything in the way of team orders. I think it's going to be winner take all for them. And what's really great, you get a team like that, and you have an opportunity to race your teammates and race yourselves, and be quite fun to see how that turns out for them today. Qualifying format, no different than it has been for the series. 20 some minutes of qualifying. The silvers will have up until 11 minutes to go to set their laps. Then the pros are released for the final 11 minutes or so. But of course, 1 minute of that taken up for the out lap. And it will be wherever you qualify. We're not regrouping them into their respective classes. So if a silver car qualifies well up inside the top 10, which we have seen in this series, they're going to get to stay there. We're not going to sort them out. They will have to do that themselves. These starts this season, John, have been absolutely electric and sometimes death-defying.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. I mean, cast your mind back to season 1 of Ginetta when we let everybody loose at Zolder in 2 30-minute sprint races. What utter chaos that was. And again, the season started off a little bit chaotic towards the front end, the mid-pack of the grid, although it has kind of sorted itself out. A few firm words from the steward, should we say, about lap 1 incidents and incidents in general, just trying to get them numbers down. But yeah, silver guys, of course, take to the circuit, as you said, Jesse. Won't be the first time that we've seen a few of these guys out qualify their pro counterparts. Of course, silver in name, but not always by pace, as Richard Hutchins has proved in the last round. I believe he beat a few pro guys to the checkered flag, and probably looking to do the same here tonight. But silver guys, Jesse, could be the kind of, the spanner in the works where, you've got a pro guy separated by 2 silver cars and then his pro rival behind. It's, you've got to still dispatch of those 2 silver cars before you can even have a sniff at gaining some more championship points, and everybody's going to want to be scoring really highly tonight. So I expect to see a bit of dicey driving and a few late lungy passes just to spice up the action. But Ted Edwards, the first car to start their flying lap here at the Nurburgring GP, and down into the first turn. Of course, it's a downhill cambered corner. You've got to get the car hooked into the inside A-pillar. Of course, right-hand drive blocking the driver's view of where that cone truly lies before switching it back over to turn 2. Of course, the beginning of the Mercedes arena. Be careful on this corner. Very easy to pick up a track limits and get the car thrown in nice and tight for turn 3 before swipping back to turn 4, sorry, as we come out of the Mercedes arena. There is a turn 5 on my track map here. It's a very slight kink before heading down into turn 6. Of course, another banked corner. You've got to get the car chucked in low, use the camera of the road to suck you around, and be careful that your rival's not going to send you a pass into the forward curve of turn 7. Crucial to get a good run out of here, of course, down into the Dunlop curve at the bottom of the hill. Again, another tricky downhill braking zone such as turn 1, so can be very easy to overshoot. Normally see two very different lines through here. You see Ted Edwards there hugging the low side of the corner. You see some cars braking much later, running up the banking and slingshotting back down to propel themselves up to the Schumacher S. Normally flat out in a GT3 car, probably a slight lift tonight for the lack of aero these GT4 cars do produce before the run to the Kumo curve, turn 11. Again, a good passing place. If you get a clean run through the Schumacher S's, you can really get an overlap before swapping back to the bit curve, turn 12. And again, another long drag down to the next corner, which is, of course, the Hatzenbach Bogen of turn 13, flat out before the run to the Vidal chicane of 14 and 15 at the top of the hill. But again, if you can get a good run out of bit curve, it sets you up well for the Vidal chicane. Careful of the anti-cuts on the inside. Very easy to upset the car. Ted flicking it through there. There's already a cone in the middle of the road before the final corner that we're a little bit debated on in the comms box tonight, whether it's the Coca-Cola curve or the Hyundai N curve. We'll take either or tonight before the run under the M-Power bridge. Ted Edwards to the line, a 2-minute 5.2. Looked just about valid in the Mercedes arena because he was all over the AstroTurf and the curbing, Jesse, but a solid time nonetheless. Frederick Rude not able to beat, and Callum Kerrigan 1.4 seconds off the pace at the moment. Although, of course, no tyre blankets, Jesse. We always see the fastest laps come late on in the session.
Sure, dude. Ted's pretty quick around here anyway, so that's going to take some beating. Looked a pretty decent lap. A little bit of things maybe you could clean up and gather a tenth or two out of it, but nothing wrong with that lap at all for Ted Edwards. Tim Ireland for the Monday gang comes across and sets a time. He is the latest of the cars to set a valid time. A couple of cars have not set a valid time, one of which including Kevin Boss for the Wheelie Slow Racing Team. That number 31 is out there still trying to set a time. So is several other cars. Bryn Jones comes to mind as well. Pavel and Matthew Malcolm have yet to set a valid time. That could be invalidation. That could just be that they didn't come out immediately when some of the other cars came out as well. Either way, they have not set a time, and they will continue to try and pound around. In fact, the 2-minute 6 seems to indicate to me that they have taken time, but it was invalid. Quite easy to do on some of these corners. Nurburgring has some quite strict track limits in places, especially some places where you reckon you could just take an extra bite of the cherry, but you can't do here. You got to be well restrained. And also, the nature of this car, this Ginetta, is such that if you try to take a curb, it can, due to the relatively low weight of the car, it'll just throw you off the racetrack in certain cases as well. My money is on a chicane invalidation for most of these cars, trying to go through there as quickly as humanly possible.
Yeah, so it's very sketchy, even in, GT3 cars, a lot bigger, a lot heavier, a lot more aero pushing them into the floor to ride some of these curbs. But again, Ginetta, lightweight, like you say, Jesse, especially with the narrow, should we say, aspect of the car, of course. Drivers pushing to where they think they can, and psych, turns out you've got 4 wheels over that white line and your lap is invalidated. But a good run there from Jack Mays through the Vidal chicane into the Coca-Cola curve there. Might pick up a little bit of draft off the car ahead. That's Kevin Boss with his run to the line. Does he put himself up on the board? Jack Mays improves up into P4, just about jumping Cormac Malloy there in the number 11. Malcolm goes P5 with a good improvement there. He puts himself into the mid-pack of the silvers. Ted Edwards still at the helm, though Callum Kerrigan has closed up that gap. Those guys are looking super close. And then Frederick Rude and Mays also very equal on lap time. So we could see a few silver battles starting to, already begin just by looking at raw pace and lap time, providing these guys can keep this up. Pavel comes to the line in the number 711. No improvement there. It was a 206.622. Slight improvement, although not good enough to jump up any more grid positions, but does pull themselves closer to Richard Hutchins in P7. Just over 3 minutes and a bit, should we say, of the session left before the pros will start to line up at pit exit. I can only assume because, of course, Jesse, no tyre blanket, so you're not really going to lose much from sitting on the apron. You're just going to gain yourself a little bit of track position and put yourself, out of the helm of the field, clean air, and that's crucially where you want to be when you're trying to set that pole time. But Kevin Boss still yet to set a time. He's running out of time, Jesse. 3 minutes on the clock.
Run out of time, and now where it's really important, especially for drivers down here, Bryn Jones, Kevin Boss, yet to set a valid lap. It's not for lack of trying. They've both run 2 laps apiece. The problem is none of them valid. That was close for Kevin Boss. I thought he was going to spear off the racetrack. Not the quickest line around there, but it's almost panic mode for Kevin Boss, just trying to set a lap time, any lap time, put something on the board, unless you're going to start from absolutely the rear of this field, and that's not what you want to do. If you can start a row in front of the last, you would rather do that most of the time, though we have seen several cars start from the back on purpose. Sideways through the chicane was Kevin Boss. Now the question is this a valid lap? He swung out really wide through the curve there. Was that admitting defeat on the lap and loading up for one more? He will have one more, and that was what it was. Another invalid lap, the slowest of his laps thus far. He's been in the 206s. That was a 207. Unfortunately, none of them have counted. Frederick Rude into the pit lane. He's third quickest right now, and he will take no further part in this session. If you are on a lap before the timer hits 11 minutes to go, you are allowed to finish that lap. Pavel will be the last car that will start a lap before the time ticks over. Everybody else, including Bryn Jones, furthest they've gotten is down into the Dunlop hairpin. All or nothing here. Ted Edwards leads the way for Race Ventura. It's a 5-2-1-2. It was a good yardstick, and it's not been beaten yet. 1/10 or thereabout for Callum Kerrigan is as close as anyone's got. Documented. Rude's not going to take further part. And Jack Maves, the Syrup and Sons car, up there in 4th place. Pavel, the top 5. So very close there, from right around 4th all the way down to 6th. And Matthew Malcolm, speaking of 6, will take no further part.
Yeah, Malcolm back to the pits. Of course, Rude back to the pits as well. So it's only Ted Edwards really to improve. Callum Kerrigan, the nearest car to challenge, and through the Vidal chicane. We were saying earlier, weren't we, Jesse, about the curbing, and that's exactly what happens. Ted Edwards nearly finding his way into the Nordschleife. Not yet open, Ted. Give it a few more months, and we might be able to turn left when we come out of the Vidal chicane very soon. But Richard Hutchins on his final attempt, of course, up to the Vidal chicane, where we've just seen Ted Edwards hook far too much curb, very cautious on the anti-cuts with the kind of bollard sticking up that's, unremovable, so it does make for a good apex spotting. Keeping it tight into the pit lane. Want to maximize the run out of the Coca-Cola curve to the line. Richard Hutchins currently in P8. Can he improve to the line? He does. Up 1 position in front of Cormac Malloy. P7 overall. And Kevin Boss, he's going to have to get a time on the board now, Jesse. This is it. P9 for Kevin Boss. 1.5 seconds off of top time. So probably not where Kevin wanted to be today. Although missing a few rounds, the championship's still wide open for him. So going to have to propel himself forward as we see the stream of pro cars leaving the pit lane. Everybody gaggling around the Mercedes arena. Look at this, Jesse. This is going to be an exciting one. We got Rebound Racing in a queue together, splitting up the Sim Brothers entries. I can't wait for this qualifying session to rear its head.
This is going to be very interesting. I'm curious how many of these cars are going to get to Sector 3, somewhere vaguely near the chicane before the final curve, and they will hit the brakes. Now, I don't know what car is out in front. I don't know if that's Boardman or Willerius. That is Andy Boardman, who leads this train out of pit lane. They will definitely not be letting off at all, as Boardman's going to try and get the Grease Weasel car as far in front as possible. But that is an absolute gaggle of cars behind them. So many more pro cars than silver cars in the field. We have 11 silver cars to finish up this championship. We've got some times that in the pro field. A couple have purposefully separated themselves just a little bit from the greater part of the pack. Theobald Roskam's one of those cars that I see. Byron in the 731 also has a little bit of space out there, and so does Boardman out in front, looking to do damage here in the final week. The question will be, what does Andy Boardman do in this qualifying session to try and make sure he secures this championship here today? It's not in the bag. He still can lose it. He's still got to perform here today, John.
Yeah, I mean, in practice, he's been looking very solid, hasn't he, Andy Boardman, getting the last of the tyre temperature into those Pirellis as he approached, of course, the Vidal chicane before rounding it super wide into the Coca-Cola curve to cut back to propel the car towards the line. We're now going to have a ride on board with Andy Boardman, your current championship leader, to see what they do differently compared to the lap that we saw, of course, Ted Edwards set earlier on. Of course, downhill braking zone. Look for that apex disappearing. The bollard's already gone. The A-pillar obscures the main part of the curb. You really do have to set your sights on there and just pray that you flick the car through. Wrestling the car already through turn 2. You can just see the steering inputs as he navigates through the Mercedes arena. Now, you want to get much, much tighter. That's what we saw Ted Edwards do. A little bit wide, but Andy Boardman manages to hook over the grey curb, and that's where you really want to put the car so you can really widen up the exit from the Mercedes arena. Of course, the kink of turn 5 past the junior cutting. Cones already over on the floor, winding in up turn 6 as much as he can before the switch back to the forward curve of turn 7. Now using all of the exit curve nearly and some more. You could really push the limits on turn 7 before coming down to the Dunlop curve. There's a few cars ahead, although that will not impact Andy Boardman at all. Let's see, will we see the different line here than what Ted ran? We don't. Again, Andy Boardman keeps it stuck to the low ground, doesn't run the double apex line like I was talking about earlier on. Up the entry curve, drops it off again to the Schumacher S. You kind of generate a little bit of understeer almost as you come off of the curb. It really can upset the balance of the car sometimes, but Andy Boardman making it work very well indeed. Again, you see these pro guys flicking to the right every corner entry just to widen up that corner that little bit more, just to gain those few extra tenths, millimeters on your opponent. Of course, one make racing, everything's so equal. The only difference being is fuel load, pressures, setups, and maybe the aero balance of the car. When you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, it is small margins that win these laps. Now into the Vidal chicane for the first time. Andy Boardman again over one curb, misses both of the anti-cut curbs, keeps the car very settled and planted before diving on the brakes, turning right, hooking it in to the pit wall and punching the throttle to propel themselves towards the BMW M Power Bridge. Underneath the Grease Weasel, 69 goes with a benchmark time of a 2-minute 4.1. Menes Rodriguez nearly answers instantly back with his time in the number 464 Sim Brothers Racing entry. That's a very close first 2 times. Joe Dorber about a second off. Christian Lindgren just outside as well. They got some big gains to get. And who's that in P3? It's Mark Martins. Jesse Lee, we have an all-star studded NASCAR lineup tonight. The keen-eyed viewers might have noticed as well Jeff Gordon in the list, and he's down in P10 at the moment as Roscam comes towards the line. P11 just ahead of Jeff Gordon there, already slipped down to P12, and already we see the silver entries, Jesse, shuffling their way into the pro field. So splitting up a lot of these championship battles quite early on. Some of these guys are going to have to get big improvements, and Les Stevenson in the mustache fronted car already up into P3, looking very strong for Les on his first lap.
Sure is. Boardman with that nicely representative time. Inez Rodriguez, the only one really in their wheelhouse. And I don't even think that's as fast as Boardman can go. I think that was, I wouldn't call it a conservative lap, but it was certainly not 100% of the pace I think we could expect out of that car. So sitting pretty here quite early on into this session. And as you look further back in the field, Ted Edwards on pole position in silver. Look at all the pro cars whose first laps were not quite good enough to clear the field. It's speckled with pro cars throughout the field. Here is Jeff Gordon for Kaiju Racing. Of course, is it the real Jeff Gordon? I'm going to leave that up to you. We'll know when the race happens. 4-time NASCAR Cup Series champion Jeff Gordon It might be Phil Roberts in disguise, but you know, they both have one thing in common: very handsome. So we'll see how that goes. Not the best lap number one for Mr. Gordon there. 13th place. Would certainly love to be somewhere vaguely near the top 5, but wouldn't we all? Miguel Martins, the ugly sweater Ginetta. Box checked on that one, Miguel. Lovely looking car from certain angles. Trying to improve their P6. 7/10 off. Does improve there. And it will be several tenths. 204, 545. Jumps them into 5th place. They were temporarily knocked down to 7th. A couple of tenths improvement. The best last name in sim racing, the KL Racing 555, coming to the line and does improve. It's a 405 or a 204. A 405 would be a horrible lap time. It's also a very stressful piece of road to drive on as well. But 204 nonetheless. Baron in the 731 was one of the cars that had space initially for Sim Brothers out the back, but right now finds themselves a little bit hounded by the Mustachio Gillette car.
Yeah, Les Stevenson putting some pressure on with that mustache towards the rear end of Byron in the Sim Brothers at 731 entry. So hopefully Byron can get the hammer down and kind of pull out a gap from Les. And I think Les has lost a bit of time in Sector 1. He's really backed out of that lap coming out of the Mercedes arena. So probably some wise driving there from Les, of course. He knows he's got another lap in the bag. He crossed the line with plenty of time to go, so he will go for another stab at it. And Jordan Daly, unlike previous rounds, seems to be qualifying for this one, Jesse. He did do, of course, the last to first a few times, or the attempt at the last to first. I'm not sure it was straight into the pit lane. Well spotted there, and practicing the pit entry, and that could probably gain him a few good tenths of a second or so. Really pushing the limit there, and it's NASCAR driver Mark Martin this time for the Kaiju Racing white entry. So a star-studded lineup of NASCAR drivers here tonight. Currently down in P28, set to improve hopefully on that position, with Carlos Calatayud also down in P29, and Jordan Daly, of course, through the pit lane. He will go. Nico Kumpu to the top of the board provisionally with a 204.047. Andy Boardman's going to have to tickle into the 203s if he wants to beat Kumpu to the pole. Raphael Huell in another one of the ugly sweater Ginettas. Again, it's a very pretty car from certain angles, as you said, but from the front, I'm not too sure. Raphael Huell all the way to the top of the board, P3, second row of the grid with a 204.212. It's getting very close at the top, as Matthias Byron is the next car to cycle on through. He's looking for a good improvement here. Only manages a P22, Jesse, the lowest of the Sim Brothers entry cars at the moment, although he's got another stab at it. Can he unlock some pace and find his way up with his teammates and maybe lend a helping hand to their championships?
Could potentially do. He's going to have to get a move on if he wants to do that. Several cars, I would reckon, at this point, a little bit out of position. It has been fixed for some, though. Nico Kumpu is trying everything they can do to try and make it an actual fight for the championship here today. He can go a long way by taking points away from Boardman for qualifying on pole. Boardman has improved, by the way, and that's why there's only 35 100ths between them on the front row right now. But Kumpu just a little bit too much for the 69 at the moment. A 4.047, just about in the threes. That's pretty darn good pace here, as qualifying is coming to an end. All flying laps will count. Several cars have already invalidated, including the 19. I know the 21 is also not on a valid lap. So Victor Nordquist bringing the car into the pit lane. Christian Lindgren down the lane automatically as well. The 256, that is Nico Kumpu, has invalidated in the final chicane, and so has Bjorn Wallerius in the most spectacular of ways. Now, that's not how you take the entry to pit lane, but he has done on this occasion. Jeff Gordon looking for a pickup, needs a pickup for the Kaiju Racing boys. What does the Rainbow Warrior have on the final lap of qualifying? It's a huge improvement up inside the top 10. Very nicely done by Jeff Gordon. Carlos Caladian for Rebound Racing will not improve, but Gordon did. It's a 4.645, and that was much needed. Snooty McFlude for It's Christmas! With a nice lap as well up inside the top 5. Listen, it was all capitals. There was like 5 exclamation points. How else were you going to say it? Les Stevenson comes across the line. He will stay in P12.
So brilliant qualifying there from all drivers, and that's how your final results look going into the race. Of course, Andy Boardman, fastest car in sectors 1 and 2. Nico Kumpu, the fastest in sector 3. So Andy Boardman's going to have to watch out towards the latter half of the lap. We then got Rafael Huel, Mendes Rodriguez, followed by Sinu McFlude, Joe Dorber. One of the Martins. We have a Martin and a Martins, so we're going to have to get used to who they are on this one, Jesse. We then got Bjorn Walerius, Jeff Gordon, Victor Nordquist, Christian Lindgren, Les Stevenson, the greatest last name in sim racing, of course, Matthew Kingston Lee. Roscam in P14, Mike Redford in P15, and then the first of your pole silver sitters, of course, Ted Edwards in P16. We then got the second of the Martin in 17th in the number 98 car. Followed by Callum Kerrigan and Frederick Rude. So Ted Edwards with a buffer of a pro car between himself and his silver rivals. We then got Mays, Pavel, Byron, another pro car in the mix of the silvers. Malcolm, Hutchins, Malloy, Kevin Boss, Tim Ireland, Jones, and finally 2 drivers at the back, of course, Calatayud and Daly, who did not set a qualifying time. So last to first challenge for those guys maybe going on today. We've seen Daly do it, or attempt it, should we say, with Billy Octane. Now maybe Carlos is joining in the fun as well. But I believe we do have the championship results in the wing, ready to pull up for you tonight. And of course, it's getting very close indeed in some aspects of the championship. Andy Boardman currently in P2 with 246 points. Nearest rival Nico Kumpu has overtaken him on the circuit, although maybe not in points tonight. 205 to the finished driver's name. Joe Dorber with 159, and we then got the block of the Sim Brothers Racing with Christian Lindgren on 138, Bjorn Walerius on 136, and Menez Rodriguez on 133 points. Tom Shipston joined with Jeff Gordon on 115 points apiece before we see Victor Nordquist just 1 point behind, and followed very closely by Snooner McFlude, rounding out your top 10 in pro. So already electric. There's going to be a lot more battles up and down the grid between drivers. So Matthew Kingston Lee, the next man on the field, P11 with 97. We then got Grim Lilith, aka Dale Earnhardt Sr. on 85. Roscam with 82, Mike Redford on 79, followed by Les Stevenson, tied with Aaron Jackson on 72 points apiece. Miguel Martins with 67, Rafael Huel with 64, and a big gap back to Matthias Byron with 40. Billy Octane on 35, who is not with us tonight, will be rounding out your top 20 in pro. Now heading towards the latter half of the field, of course, Jordan Daly with 25. Carlos Calatayud, who said it in the YouTube chat, every lap invalidated in qualifying, just not his championship for sure in P22. Everyone else with a dash next to their name has unfortunately signed out and will take no further part in the championship, which is a shame because there's some big names in there as well. Now, rounding on to the silver class, of course, Ted Edwards at the helm, 227 points to Callum Kerrigan's 227 points separate the silver field. Matthew Malcolm with 208, just outside the top 2, although keep your eye on him for what they can do tonight. Richard Hutchins on 160, followed by Tim Ireland on 159. We then got Bren Jones on 149 and Kevin Boss on 130. Pavel on 99, and then we've got Cormac Malloy and Frederick Rude tied on 40 points apiece, rounding out your top 10 in silver. And of course, moving on to the final page, Jack Mays is your last scorer tonight with 31 points. Everyone else with a dash, of course, next to their name has signed out and will take no further part. And being told we have a little bonus on the roof of Matthew Malcolm's car, Jesse. Apparently it's just for you, so hopefully on the formation lap we'll be able to catch that one. Not sure what it is. I've not looked myself, so I will.
Anytime a driver
I'll let that
tells
be shown.
me, anytime a driver tells me that they've left something for me on the car, that's usually not a particularly pleasant thing, but I think it might be in Matthew Malcolm's case. You know, the overarching sentiment from that qualifying in our chat, quite simple. There's commiserations and frustrations out of a lot of drivers based on how the qualifying went. You documented that Carlos Caladia didn't get a single valid lap in there. Frustrating for sure for them. Kevin Boss didn't hit their lap. Cormac Molloy was a bit upset because they went out on grain and used tires, and quali was unable to get the lap down that they felt they could do. Matthew Malcolm was not pleased with their quali. That's made their day a little harder. Malcolm has a shot at this championship still, and I think Matthew's already worked out the way it has to go down. Ted Edwards on pole, but if they finish fourth, Ted Edwards that is, Matthew Malcolm wins the race and has the fastest lap, I think Malcolm would win this championship here today. So 3 drivers in it for the silver title. The top 2, Kumpu and Boardman, in it as well. Kumpu firing the first shot with the pole position here over Boardman, and Boardman finishing second won't be enough. Nico's going to have to hope that Andy has issues throughout this race to help facilitate that a 40-some point gap, but it is still doable. There is a championship on in both categories still here today in the finale of the Ginetta Cup. You know, John, as we get ready to set off for the final race, I just sort of been reminiscing a little bit on this championship about how it's gone. And my sentiment is quite simple. These cars have proved very entertaining to watch in a one-make sort of spec series. Of course, Ginettas have historically ran in one-make Ginetta Cup championships before, so we're not really doing anything new here, but the difficulty of this car has brought out a lot of natural talent and also a lot of good racing, a lot of strategy involved as well with how you deploy your pit stops. Tonight, I don't see why it would be any different here.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic season, as you say, Jesse. Of course, the Ginettas always lead themselves to some excellent one-make racing. We saw that in Season 1 with how competitive that got, let alone running a second season of it. And I can only assume that we're going to eventually be seeing this car for a third time by sometime next year, because it does make for some epic racing no matter, you know, who you are. You've always got to fight in there somewhere, and like you say, it does bring out a lot of natural talent, of course, with the lack of air, of course, the tire blankets not being a thing.
Drive these cars.
Exactly, you've really got to hustle these cars around, and it does unlock a lot of potential where you may not have known that you did have some to begin with. And of course, the RCI calendar this week, if you do want to get involved, although we do say goodbye to the Ginettas, we are still very much alive with a full calendar. So Wednesday sees our team championship head stateside for their GT4 efforts to the Circuit of America's Porcelain Racing, still leading RRP Luna Rossa Racing in Pro, Ground Zero leading RPMS Simsport from Wheelie Slow in Silver.
What a
Thursday
back and forth champ that's been on Wednesday. Holy cow.
Indeed. Thursday, big news for iRacing. If you're listening, iRacing one-off event taking place at Sebring. LMP2 and LMP3 battle it out for an hour at the famous American Raceway. And of course, Saturday this week, Night Owl taking a break in exchange for the big one. Of course, it's the World Tour finale heading stateside. Much like every other event this week, we round out at Watkins Glen with SPHE Motorsport leading GT3 Pro in dominant fashion from Odox Motorsport and RCI Blue. Meanwhile, split 2, it's Goat Racing smooth as butter from Connexus Motorsport and dropping the hammer racing. Of course, you can catch all the action on RCI TV on Saturday. That's on YouTube and Twitch, where we'll be gracing you with our presence. But for tonight, of course, it's the final time we wave this race off to a green flag start. Of course, cars 2 by 2 as we head towards the start gantry. Wait for the lights to turn green, and they do go green. Zandvoort was an epic start for Nico Kumpu. He's going to have to do the exact same thing again as he fends off Andy Borman down into turn 1. But with him, he's bringing a Sim Brothers car. And just behind, of course, Raphael Huell in the ugly sweater Ginetta to the inside. It looks like Kumpu has managed to break clear of Andy Borman. He's got the overlap into turn 1. Got the drive off the corner through the Mercedes arena, but Boardman looking extra racy through turn 2, tries the outside of 3. It's a big lunge, although it would have put him on the inside for 4 if he could have made it stick,
man.
But just backing out, a dab of the brakes. We got a little bit of chaos in the background. I'm not sure. Who was involved in that? Can't be Malcolm. Surely he's got a championship
It
to
is
contend.
Pavel involved as well. The 5 cars off. Several cars didn't make it through the arena. Sorry, John. We're going to take a look at what happened. This all started off here, and this is where the initial contact happened with the 7-Eleven. They're able to skirt through this, but they end up getting backwards before they leave the arena section. The 62 has just left the racetrack. Another big accident as we've come through the Ford curve. Les Stevenson.
No, that's Andy Boardman.
That's Andy Boardman, in fact. It says Les Stevenson. It isn't. The replay messing up there for sure. More contact here. Boardman's losing positions down to 4th place. 1 car off into the dirt there. Was that Raphael Huell? That isn't Huell. Oh, was
it is
Huell.
It is in the ugly sweat of Ginetta.
Sim Brothers car. Menez Rodriguez right onto the back, slips up into 3rd place as Huell goes down the order 1 position. Boardman's able to recover here, but Nico Kumpu is gone.
Yeah, absolutely gone up the road. He's going to be looking in his mirrors, Jesse's rubbing his hands with glee that Boardman has had to take a fight from Huell, and he's now got Menez Rodriguez pressuring him as well. As in the background, we see Joe Dorber get past Snooty McFlude, or possibly even defend from Snooty into the Vidal chicane. And, you know, this is an ideal start for Nico Kumpu. This is exactly what he wanted to see. He wants to drive away cleanly from the field, have clear air ahead of him, nobody in the mirror, and he can really focus on the laps and drill in consistent timings across the next 57.5 minutes. But everybody in formation coming down into turn 1. I don't think we're going to see any lunges this early on in the race, but everybody wants to get the championship points that they can. And we've got Victor Nordqvist here and an ugly sweater Ginetta sandwich. That's Snooty McFlude ahead with Raphael Huell just behind. He finds his teammate Christian Lindgren just behind him in P8 as well. As the cars snake through the Mercedes arena, we've got the number 139 down the pit lane. That's Walerius. I can only imagine that's going to be for damage incurred on the opening lap, but everybody else has relatively kept with it. The number 28 showing a yellow flag through the Mercedes arena now as well. I'm not sure what happened there, but Jordan Daly already up into P16, Jesse, from the back of the grid, and with him he's brought Carlos Calatayud in P17. It's a fantastic start for these two.
It sure has been. It's been an absolutely nightmarish start for Matthew Malcolm, who was an early casualty in turn 2 in the arena section of the racetrack. And on this lap, a similar worry for Callum Kerrigan, who has went off in the very same fashion in the very same section of corners. So a couple of silver drivers having an absolutely nightmarish start here. Ted Edwards has got away from this pretty much intact. He's got Frederick Rude right behind him, relatively speaking, nearly 2 seconds behind him, but the closest car to him. And look at this, Jordan Daly down to the inside of Mark Martin. It's going to be argy-bargy shades of Joey Logano, and now Jeff Gordon around the outside. He's stuck in the middle as Daly. It was 3 wide for a moment. Contact with Gordon on the outside. Daly somehow manages to keep that position, gives it up to Martin though. Martin gets back out in front. Here comes Jeff Gordon looking around the outside. The last of their 8 breakers in the chicane. Oh, and it's going to be a punt. Mark Martin's been shoved off the racetrack. This really is shades of Pocono now. Joey Logano getting into the back of Mark Martin now. That's a reference only I get, but I'm still making it.
Brilliant scenes right now with the NASCAR drivers on the field. Of course, Mark Martin receiving a bump in the back from Daly, and I'm not sure if Jeff Gordon will retaliate the favor back to Jordan Daly, although to the outside he goes into turn 1. Go on, Jesse.
At that race where Joey Logano punted Mark Martin, who is the nicest driver in all of motorsports, Tony Stewart went up to Joey Logano and punched the crap out of him after the race. So is Jeff Gordon going to be the analog for Tony Stewart here today, because Tony isn't here? Here's a replay of what happened here. Jordan Daly's just trying to, I guess he can brake a little bit later than the Mark Martin car. That's Aaron Jackson, by the way, in the Valvoline or the Kaijuline car. And I don't know if Daly outbraked himself, or maybe Daly's braking point was way later, but either way, it was a shunt to the Kaijuline car. Daly has been able to get around Jeff Gordon now. And something else has happened to Andy Boardman. A little bit of contact here, and that's not where you want it in the S's.
Yeah, this was lap 1, I think, we're seeing here from Andy Boardman and Raphael Huell. And That was nearly very much Andy Boardman swallowed up by a charging pack of Ginetta's through the back, but he has managed to rein in Nico Kumpu about half a second to the good in the last 3 minutes or so since we last checked in with this fight. So looks like Boardman is really fired up. He's riled up and ready to go. He wants to take the rebound racing car. He wants that final win, and Joe Dorber getting very close as well to the back of Menez Rodriguez. Of course, if he can get through Menez Rodriguez and catch Andy Boardman, that's almost like a rear gunner effect, isn't it, for Nico Kumpu? You know, Dorber can make his Ginetta as wide as he possibly can. He can jink left, jink right, really fill the mirrors of Andy Boardman up and try and off-put him to the tune of Nico Kumpu, who took the fastest lap very briefly before Andy Boardman answered right back at it, and we're getting super dicey down the main straight away, Jesse. But Studi McFlude lurking in the background with the ugly sweater Ginetta duo. That's Raphael Huell just behind as well. They're closing up on this pack that are just wasting time squabbling at the moment.
You don't really have much of a choice. You got to get in the positions where you find them, and right now is the best possible time to do that. So everybody's running over each other, sometimes quite literally so, trying to get these positions off of each other, and that's just the nature of this racing. That's what we've seen all season long with the starts of these races. These cars are not the most aerodynamic cars. There's not a whole lot of mechanical grip there, and sometimes you've got to just go for it, and here it is. Joe Dauber, a lunge into the corner. It looked a little bit more dramatic than it actually was. The push coming from behind with McFlude, and here comes Raphael Huell, who has come back into this picture. It is a squadron of ugly sweater cars, and my goodness, that face seems to be multiplying in the mirror for Rebound Racing's Joe Dauber.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely terrifying, isn't it? Looking in the TV camera and seeing two pairs of eyes just kind of looming down on you as you turn in towards the apex and accelerate your way out of these corners. But Joe Dauber, of course, wants to get a move on. He wants to try and catch Menez Rodriguez and get through him before Andy Boardman, of course, gets near Nico Kumpu. But I don't think he's going to be able to do it because his mirrors are full, like we said, with the ugly sweater Ginettas. Meanwhile, Rebound Racing in flying formation here. Carlos Calatayud following his teammate Roskam, who goes a little bit wide at the top of the hill in that's turn 11 before the switch back to turn 12, and Jordan Daly trying the outside of turn 12. That's a very ballsy move, of course, with the majority of the grip being on the inside there, around the outside of the Hatzback and Bogan towards the Vidal chicane, of course, and move signed, sealed, and delivered on Roskam. He can now set his sights on Calatayud to propel themselves forward all the way from the back of the grid up into P13 and P14 at the moment. And Jesse Lee, I can't wait until we watch those cars turn left instead of right at the final corner.
Yes, indeed. It's going to be quite interesting. Carlos Calatayud here trying to make their way up through the field, and they've done quite a good job. Keep in mind, this car started next to the last in this race, and they're all the way up in 13. They've been helped by many of the incidents that have occurred in this race. And of course, anybody that's pitted, we saw Jordan Valerius come in early on, and they're all by themselves. They're almost up to the Vidal chicane right now. But the unfortunate part for them is their pit stop didn't count to their mandatory stop because they have to do that inside the window, and the window is not active yet. And that's a little bit of an issue for them and anybody else who's had issues early on in this race. The 28 as well, I believe that's Callum Kerrigan's car, is running second to last now. Everything calming down just a little bit for the moment. Nico Kumpu out in front, but only just in front of Andy Boardman, who has run him down. It was more than a second and a half the gap, Kumpu to Boardman, and it is all but gone. Boardman has the fastest lap of the race and is right behind Nico for the lead. Meanwhile, this man, Ted Edwards, has no rival. Frederick Rude was right behind him, with second and a half to 2 seconds, give or take. But the Race Ventura car all by himself now inside the top 10. His only rivals are pro cars working on Mike Redford here for P9. Frederick Rude has had some calamity as they have dropped the better part of 10 positions.
Yeah, so not a good start for the Norwegian driver, Frederick Rude, of course, but an excellent start nonetheless for Ted Edwards. Just inside the top 10, and Mike Redford with a big wiggle through the Vidal chicane, using a bit too much of the curb, as we said earlier in qualifying, can really upset these cars, so got to be careful on that one. But Ted Edwards, all he's got to do now is just kind of, just stay where he is, Jesse. He hasn't really got a challenge. He hasn't really got to fight anyone. But he does look like he wants to get past Mike Redford. And Mike Redford pulls off to the right-hand side. Not sure if he's setting himself up to defend. He's certainly not allowing Ted Edwards through as he comes off the inside. Les Stevenson, of course, at the back with front row seats to this fight that is about to emerge as we enter the Mercedes arena. Of course, Redford on the defensive. Edwards looks to try and do the old up and under. Can he get alongside before the next part? No. Redford just about swoops around the outside and covers off the inside very nicely. A wiggle there from Ted Edwards. A much cleaner exit from Redford, but he's hampered himself a little bit on the exit. But then Ted Edwards gets a big slide. It's tit for tat, Jesse. Not one driver with a consistent advantage. There's a mistake. It switches back, and then there's another mistake from the opposite driver, and they will keep their form as they were down into the forward curb. But Ted Edwards certainly looks very racy, Jesse. Looks like he wants to get a move on and almost get involved with the pro guys on this field.
Yeah, he does. He's got to be very careful. The Race Ventura car here just has to be quite calm. Ted really wants to get by Mike Redford, and I can appreciate that. He's got a charging Les Stevenson who doesn't really care too much about Ted Edwards. It's a position that doesn't pay him points. What Les would appreciate here is for Ted to get beside or upset Redford in some way and possibly allow the mustachioed car to squeak their way through as well, but that hasn't come to pass. But Ted has everything to lose here in this race. He's got the lead. So I don't know. He's being awfully aggressive, which is fine. Nothing says two classes can't race each other, but he has been gifted an absolute gem here. It'd be a shame for it to all come undone. Speaking of which, the sweaters colliding. That's got to create some static electricity, yeah?
That was terrible, Jesse. But yeah, the ugly sweater Ginetta's colliding in the Mercedes arena, and it looks like this time Raphael Huell has a run on Snooty McFlude, left to right. Of course, Snooty on the outside, Raphael Huell on the inside in the blue car, and side by side down into the hairpin. But meanwhile, Victor Nordquist behind, watching to see, can he capitalize on anything? Is he close enough if the door opens? There's some more friendly fire there, Jesse. It looks like the Sim Brothers car is now going to try and get involved around the outside of Snooty, although not enough momentum to pull the Ginetta around, and they will hold station. But that has definitely brought Victor Nordquist into this fight now, and we always have this, don't we, Jesse, where the cars are kind of packed together at the start, they spread out, and then these kind of trains begin to form throughout the field. And another Sim Brothers car in the background, that's Christian Lindgren, could soon make it a 2v2, two ugly sweater Ginettas versus two Sim Brothers. Who will win in this fight? I think time will tell over the next 46.5 minutes.
I could guarantee the Sim Brothers didn't do this on purpose, but those look like two ugly sweater cars and two candy cane cars to me, and 'tis the season after all. Of course, those are just the Sim Brothers colors. Those are not particularly Christmassy colors, other than the fact that they do represent Christmassy colors in this respect. So interesting to see them go at it. Nothing new for Nordquist and Lindgren to be racing each other. It'll be a fairly old hat at it by now, but here is the state of the lead. Nico Kumpu has it. It's not enough for him to win this race, have the fastest lap and the pole position. That still will not be enough to defeat Andy Boardman. Boardman's going to have to lose some spots here, but that is not what's happened. Andy Boardman has the quickest lap. That's what the magenta number on the pylon means. He is the quickest car on the racetrack. He has run down Nico Kumpu, and he's been stuck behind him for the last couple laps. This is where the games begin for Grease Weasel Racing, just sort of buying their time. And I will say, Boardman's not made an aggressive move. We've seen a lot of aggressive moves early in this race. Boardman's not doing that. He knows what's at stake. One mistake here could be the end of his championship run. He knows that. He's not being overly aggressive. He's sort of offsetting himself in some of the corners. He's not following too closely, doing everything right, Andy Boardman, so far.
Yeah, Boardman, we do know, can be aggressive in certain scenarios, but he's really learned from being overly aggressive, I'd say, in the past couple of seasons here at RCI. We've seen some clumsy mistakes being made towards the end of the season in almost desperation, I would say, but he certainly looks like he's got his head screwed on at the moment. He knows that he's coming into this round with a championship advantage, and all he's really got to do, like you said, Jesse, is just stick with Nico Kumpu and just make sure he doesn't run away with it, make sure he doesn't undo his own race. Of course, we spoke earlier of track limits here, Jesse. It's a topic that's always on the lips of every commentator here at the Nurburgring, and you know, we can't see how many penalties a driver is on at the moment, or how many warnings, should I say, before, of course, the dreaded penalty does come in. And you'll probably see some drivers pushing the limits at the beginning and then coming really conservative about halfway through, where they realise they're teetering on the edge of getting that drive-through penalty. And of course, with our live stewards here tonight as well, casting their eye over everything, they'll be handing out penalties as they seem fair. And I'm sure they're frantically scribbling through lap one, and there's a lot to unfold there. And we're, you know, quite a way, nearly over a quarter of the way into the race, and we're still yet to have our first reports through, but we will keep you updated, of course, when we do see them. And that's a big mistake there from Jones over the curb, slingshots the car to the right hand side, and that allows Cormac Malloy through in the number 11 down into the Dunlop curve. And it gets very close, does Jones, and there's contact, Jesse, on the banking. That's not what we want to see. Cormac Malloy turned around. He's going to have to get the car facing the right way again, up and over the curb, through the gravel. Heaps of time lost. That's Tim Ireland picking his way through the slow cars. That got very dangerous indeed. But let's have a look, of course, into the Dunlop curve. It looks like Malloy was just trying to scrub a little bit of speed off, maybe to try and get the car back down to the inside of the bank. And unfortunately, Jones just running into him, and then, of course, almost bumping him twice as he spun around. And Tim Ireland here coming through, trying to pick his way through the middle of the two. And this has now become a little bit of a fight, of course, with Tim Ireland at the helm, Cormac Malloy in the middle, and Bren Jones at the back. And it looks like Malloy is very racy indeed. He wants to get away from Jones this time, I think. He wants to dispatch a Tim Ireland and kind of create a buffer between himself and the number 6 behind.
Yeah, Bren just went in there. I guess Bren was just on the throttle a little bit quicker than Cormac was, and just rear-ended him, spun him around. So easy to do in ACC. Bren kind of accepted fault, waited for him, and that's what created the mobile chicane. But as quickly as that all happened, Cormac passed Tim Ireland back and is setting their sights on what's going on in front. The good news is the damage was done on the timing and scoring sheet, not really on the car. The tap wasn't insignificant, to say the least, but it wasn't a big deal on these cars. Again, GT4 cars, less aero dependent. It's a Ginetta after all. But what I have noticed is that the whole left side of the number 11 Moy car is scraped up. So something happening very early on. I do wonder, based on where they were running at the start, did they possibly get a little bit of that early Matthew Malcolm incident? They were certainly in the area of that, and I wonder if maybe a scraped by there. But a position gained, technically 2 positions gained here, but only one of them relative, considering Ireland was behind whenever that incident occurred, and now behind again. Contacts everywhere, including this one. Jordan Daly not getting a valid lap in qualifying, and he just goes in there, and a little bit of hip check there to the number 30. Daly's going to let him go back on through. Carlos Collodi, and that wouldn't be the first time those 2 drivers have had contact in this series.
Yeah, I think people gravitate towards each other, don't they, Jesse? In certain series, we always see the same drivers towards the end, of course, ending up in their fights. And some drivers forget, and other drivers do really hold that grudge all the way to the end of the season, and even beyond sometimes into following events, etc. But could just be one of those things. They've naturally gravitated towards each other again in similar pace, similar starting positions, and everybody's fired up, wants to get the ground that they can, and that's just what has happened. The slowest, least aggressive flash there from Snooty McFlute behind on Victor Nordquist as they come out of the Mercedes arena. Probably Snooty wants to get a move on. That face is absolutely terrifying. It's even worse on an ugly sweater car, I would say, than the standard Flying Hellfish Taters livery on that one. But Nicholas Nordquist fending him off quite nicely down into the Dunlop curve, and of course through the Ford curve just beforehand as well. And of course he's got some backup behind in the form of Christian Lindgren if he can of course catch up to Snooty McFlute. Pit window is open, 20 minutes on the clock to get your Ginetta down the lane. And if you are new to us here tonight and wondering what the pit stop rule set is, it's 1 mandatory stop with of course the pit window being 20 minutes in length. A fixed 25-second refueling. Of course, whether you take 1 litre, 50 litres, 100 litres, it will still cost you the 25 seconds. And tyres, of course, only costing an additional 5 seconds. And from speaking to drivers at Zandvoort, everybody was naturally gravitating towards the fact that tyres were the option to take every single time this round. I think somebody said they've never tried to double stint the tyres because they're excellent in the kind of mid to late 3/4 of the race, and the final quarter they just kind of fall off a cliff. You lose so much pace that the 5 seconds you save by not taking them is kind of outweighed by the gap loss towards the end of the race. Jeff Gordon looking super racy with the greatest last name in sim racing, Matthew Kingston Lee. He wants no further part of this one, and he'll peel the Kaiju DuPont livery down to the pit lane. Coming down, of course, Jeff Gordon will be one of your first cars to stop today, along with Les Stevenson just ahead, of course, indicated by the white P on the timing tower. And once a driver has completed their mandatory stop, the orange one will turn to a green block, which kind of, lets you know who the first on the road is that has made the stop. So that's the car you want to be keeping your eye on. Meanwhile, towards the front, Menez Rodriguez still and Joe Dorber locked together. Raphael Hewer's now broken away from his teammate, of course, Snooder McFlude, that we saw battling just a few laps ago. And they will find their way through the Ford curve and down to the Dunlop curve as well, trying to get involved in this position fight here, which is essentially for the last step of the podium. And Andy Boardman at the helm of the field, Jesse, we said it, didn't we, about 10 minutes ago? He's just holding station. He just wants Nico to make that natural mistake, or, jump him in the pit lane somehow, or, track limits be a thing, or just put him under so much pressure that Nico makes a minor mistake, and that's enough to allow him through to the top step of the podium. But very heads-up driving at the moment from Boardman.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, John. I think that's exactly what Boardman's doing here. And I think that's really smart. You have nothing to lose, or excuse me, you have nothing to gain, but everything to lose if you're Boardman. And if you're Kumpu, you take solace in the fact that Boardman is not all over you right now. You know the game. And if you're Nico, you also know, well, I can't win the championship if he runs second. So there's not a whole lot I can do. I'm doing everything I can do, barring having the quickest lap of the race, which that window has sailed. You're going to have to put new boots on the car and have an opportunity after the pit stop to take that time. Andy Boardman brings the Greased Weasel 69 into the pit lane. The championship leading car is the first of the top two to come in. Will that elicit a response from Kumpu the next time through? Meanwhile, the fight between these two continues on. Nordquist through on McFlude. McFlude's not given up on the chase, and just in the background, the second Sim Brothers car, Christian Lindgren, in the picture as well. And it's going to be a huge dive from Lindgren, and it almost came to contact there in one. Lindgren needed every square millimeter of room to get that car wound up, and he just about does. And I wonder if Snooty just knows how close he came from a local yellow flag there in turn number one. That was oh so close.
Super close from these guys, wasn't it? It was a very desperate dive, I would say, by Lindgren, but it was enough to put off Snooty, and that's allowed Victor Nordquist to almost escape up the road at this point, and of course clear the gap somewhat. Andy Boardman drops off the jacks and will leave pit lane. He's going to bring himself out into some traffic. I believe the number 11 just overtaking him on the run down into turn one. So he's going to slip down the timing tower naturally on the left-hand side of your screen. But green square next to his name indicates, of course, the lead car essentially on the pit stop cycle that has stopped. So everybody that comes out kind of ahead of him and on a green box has done very well indeed. And speaking of doing very well, Ted Edwards, still your silver leader, still behind Mike Redford, although the gap has extended itself somewhat. He finds his teammate Jordan Daly just behind him as well in the Race Ventura entry, of course, the number 197. Jordan Daly again got caught up in some incidents in this race, so it won't surprise me, Jesse Lee, if we see a few time penalties being dished out very shortly by the stewards. But all still very quiet next door, frantically writing down 25 minutes into the race, and we're not seeing a steward's decision just yet. I think that just proves how much chaos did erupt on that first lap.
Yeah, it was absolutely insane. I start to worry about some of these cars right now, about how many track limits they have. This is a track where it kind of sneaks up on you. Some tracks you know when you've gone over the limit, don't you, John? And you're just like, I know I've went over the limit. Imola comes to mind. Like, there's a couple of places that you can go off and you're just like, I know I'm gonna get popped for one there. Here, it kind of happens sporadic, and it'll sneak up on you, and all of a sudden you look at the bottom left quadrant of your screen, and it says you got 3 track cut warnings, and you have to mind your P's and Q's quite nicely. So I do worry with some of the hectic driving that has gone on early on into this race, scrambling for those spots, if many drivers are not nursing at least a couple at this point. But things have started to calm down a little bit. Shout out to Ash Bibby for the £5 donation to the RCI server fund. Thank you so much. Message reads, surprise accent uwu. I'll do you one better. I'm going to give you a genuine uwu. I'm going to give a genuine. I do apologize for this. Uwu. That's a real one for you right there. That was, we're going to call that OG uwu on that right now. Dangerous precedent set here on the RCI TV channel. I will uwu for server donations. I will do it. Of course, all donations made to the RCI TV account goes directly back into putting on more of these races. So thank you very much, Ash Bibby, for, I think that's 4 weeks in a row on a Monday making me say uwu. John, do you want to give it a shot? Go ahead. Give it an uwu.
You're not getting an uwu from me at all, Jesse Lee. But of course, thank you very much to Ash Bibby for the £5. Of course, like you say, it does go back into the RCI server pool, which is provided by, of course, one of our partners. That's AK Esports, a leading Italian company in esports management and organisation across the world, working with many successful brands along the way, including, of course, the SRO Motorsports Group, Delara, and, of course, us here at RCI with our server solutions. And not only AK Esports, of course, partnering us, but also driver61.com, where you can get 25% off your driver coaching by using our discount code with a link in the description below. Of course, from one-on-one driver coaching to, full driving courses, sure the folks at Driver61 will have something that fits your needs and have helped thousands hone their skills and discover unknown potential. Fanatec, again, needs no introduction on who they are, one of the leading brands in dedicated sim racing hardware, and we do have an affiliate link in the description down below. So if you are looking to pick up some new hardware for you or your loved one in the holiday season, then be sure to use our affiliate links. It does sprinkle a few pennies into the RCI server pool. And of course, 2 new partners for 2023, digitalmotorsports.com, offering a number of products and services, from virtual driving experiences, corporate events, and an early drive program with BMW at Mondello Park. From, sim rig solutions, complete turnkey sim rigs, and of course hardware as well. So be sure to check them out if you are in their target market, and, get yourselves some bits ordered for the holiday season. Go Setups, of course, lastly but no means least, formed to be a premium esports setup store for ACC, with their primary aim to create setups for all skill levels, whether you're esports ready or just looking for a safer alternative for your favorite car, including a lot of LFM BOP balance updates to their setups as well. So keeping relevant with the market. I'm sure they'll be the first of many, should we say, to publish some Nordschleifer setups when that eventually drops, alongside, of course, the rumoured GT2 cars that should be coming any day now. But back to the race, of course, at hand. We've got some big penalties being dished out at the moment. We've got Malcolm for a drive-through Jesse Lee. I can only assume that's going to be for track limits, although I could be wrong, because Stewart's messages are being pounded through to us at the moment. And a stop-go 30 for Raphael Huel. That's definitely going to be for speeding in the pit lane.
Yeah, it sure is. We've got a bunch of stuff coming in, so we're going to live fire this off. Lap 1, turn 1 incident involving cars 199, the 711, the 25, and the 28. A drive-through penalty issued to car 199, deemed too far inside, brakes while moving over, lifts the brakes completely, and then hits the 711, pushing them into the other cars, causing a domino-style effect. So a drive-through penalty for the 199 for causing an incident there in turn 1 on lap 1. Racing incident in turn 2 between the 30, the 11, and the 711. A drive-through penalty for the 711 in the very next corner, turn 3. So we're still in the arena section on the first lap. Drive-through for car 711, simply take out, position not returned. on car number 6. A warning for car 62 for an unsafe rejoin in turn number 4. Drive-through penalty for car 139 in turn 5 on lap 1. Contact with the 139 and the 225 is a racing incident. However, the 139 is not holding brakes, causing the takeout of car 62. Position not returned. So drive-through issued there. No further action between the 21 and the 69 in the 9th turn on lap 1. Racing incident on lap 2, turn 3 between the 28, the 62, and the 31. The 28 loses it on their own. So that's what happened to Callum Kerrigan. And the 62 and 31 do not have enough time to take avoiding action. So racing incident as well in lap 2, turn 8 between the 141 and the 31. Minor contact. That was Kevin Boss and Tim Ireland, in fact. Lap 2, turn 12 incident. A warning given to either the 197 or the 98. Unknown which one, but deemed avoidable contact there. Racing incident. Lap 2, turn 12 between the 225 and the 197. That's Phil Roberts, or Jeff Gordon in this case, and Jordan Daly. Still lap number 2, turn 17 this time. Warning for car 19, going too wide. Doesn't do enough to ensure a safe rejoin. Hits the 21, but loses the position ultimately. So not a penalty per se, just a warning for the 19 and caution issued there. 5-second penalty for car 197 for a forceful overtake, position not returned versus car 98 on lap 2, turn 17. We saw the replay of that. Racing incident between the 141 and the 31 for minor contact on lap 3. Kevin Boss and Tim Ireland had a couple of back and forths on the opening laps, apparently.
Yeah, say a bit of RCI friendly fire, should we say, between the event admin and, of course, Kevin Boss, the good all-round broadcaster, commentator, and everything else in between as well. So not what we want to see between staff members, but unfortunately it does, of course, happen sometimes. Meanwhile, Nico Kumpu and Andy Boardman find themselves locked together on circuit after serving their mandatory pit stops. And just behind Jesse Lee, look who it is, it's Joe Dorber. He's very close indeed, so he's going to want to try to get close to Boardman and maybe not send the car to the inside, but certainly make it awkward for Boardman to put a move on his teammate. And just behind, I think Menez Rodriguez getting even closer as well. So top 4 locked very nicely together at the moment. They've got clear road ahead of them all the way, I would say, confidently, nearly until the end. They're not going to encounter too much traffic unless a car leaves the pit lane at an awkward moment. Of course, just 6.5 minutes left on the pit window, and you've still got your top 5 yet to pit. Mays is down the lane this time by to serve their mandatory stop. Jordan Daly, of course, with a 5-second to his name. That can only be from the stewards. That's, of course, for lap 2, turn 17, the 197 and the 98. 5 seconds for a forceful overtake on the 197. And stewards are only just writing up lap 3. And we're currently on lap 16, so there's still plenty more to check out. This one may go until after the checkered flag, which, of course, is not ideal for the stewards working overtime, especially in the finale. But Joe Dorber tucking in behind Andy Boardman towards the Vidal chicane, and equally, Kumpu is all over the curb on the inside. I thought that was a little bit too much, but he's just about managed to hold it on, I would say. And look at this, Sim Brothers getting involved with the rebound car just behind as well. Everybody's getting super dicey. 25.5 minutes to go, Jesse Lee. Top 4 locked in a line. This could be anyone's to take.
Could very well be. Of the top 4 or 5 that haven't pitted, Lindgren, Kaladian, and Roscom are in the pit lane. Redford and Kingston Lee will continue on. And if I know the best last name in sim racing, he's going to go to the absolute limit here in the KL Racing 555 Ginetta. Well, no movement between Kumpu and Boardman. You'll remember Boardman was in before Kumpu. That did elicit a response from Kumpu, who then had to cover off and come down the pit lane. We have no reason to believe that these drivers didn't change tires. So operating on that, I will say Joe Dauber was an early adopter coming down pit lane. Did it in space as well. Has made up a ton of time. The same with Menez Rodriguez. No movement between Kumpu and Boardman, but what the pit stop did was it drew Dauber and Menez Rodriguez into this fight. So a four-way battle, as you say, the majority of the field pitting, the only two that haven't, Redford and Kingston Lee, out in front. Katrina has joined us in the chat saying, is Thomas winning? Yes, your man is indeed spanking the pants off of him here today. He sat on the pole, and he's also just absolutely driven away from them. Thomas is showing off. We call him Ted Edwards. The reason why we call him Ted is because we have too many dang Toms here that work at RCI. Ted Edwards, of course, an event manager does primarily the Night Out Championship. He's also a commentator who joins me for that championship and many more besides, mind you. And he's also an accomplished racer at that. We call him Ted because we have 6 different Toms. It gets quite confusing. So he literally said, you just call me Ted then. And so we do. But obviously his partner, Katrina, doesn't do that. But Ted is absolutely in a different zip code, postcode for you Europeans, than anybody else in his class. Now, the only thing that could be his undoing is, of course, a dreaded drive-through penalty. I don't think he's going to get one from the stewards. I think it's been a clean race from Ted, but he could get one for jumping the track limits. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Matthew Malcolm's chimed in, quite upset with how it all went down for him on the racetrack. And he must have said that while he was serving his penalty earlier on. It has just been a nightmarish race for Matthew Malcolm, a driver who came in with an opportunity to take this championship off of Ted today, and it just hasn't happened.
Yeah, unfortunately, Ted in, like you said, another league of his own, essentially. Meanwhile, Kevin Boss and Frederick Rude come to blows. Wow. That's through the bit curve. That's turn 12. Before, of course, we reached the Hatzenbach Bogan, and a flash of the lights from Kevin Boss there. Maybe not happy with how that one went down. Just touching on Matthew Malcolm again, of course, he has unfortunately retired from the race, Jesse. 29 cars started, only 28 are still circulating. The one car I can't see on the list is, of course, Malcolm. So very unfortunate there, but he has launched a public apology in the Ginetta Discord chat as well. Not sure what happened in turn 1. He can only apologise, and he doesn't know why he lifted the brakes. It's just one of those things. Maybe you thought you had a bit more space to brake, and unfortunately that gap does close very fast sometimes, and I've even fallen victim to that one in my career, especially in ACC on cold brakes and tyres in some of these turn 1 pinch points. They are very nasty indeed. Speaking of what isn't nasty, though, is, of course, the iRacing championships that are opening up, the one-off events.
That's the transition you're going with?
That's how I'm going. We got to shoehorn iRacing in somewhere, right? Of course, we got a couple of iRacing events on the website. The first of which being, of course, is the one-off event this Thursday, the Sebring Prototype Challenge, and as the name suggests, of course, LMP2 and LMP3 battle it out for an hour at the famous raceway, and Andy Boardman nearly backs into Nico Kumpu. That's going to open the door this time for Joe Dorber to try alongside into the Mercedes arena, but he's on the wrong side of Andy Boardman. Nico Kumpu's going to get a slight breakaway. Boardman over the track limits. That's definitely going to be an infraction if ever I saw one dished out by the game. And Joe Dorber and Menes Rodriguez bunch up now on to the back of Andy Boardman. Nico Kumpu, I believe he's got Mays ahead of him to dispatch of in that white and red Ginetta as they head through turn 6, and the train snakes behind Andy Boardman. It's a very short train, but a deadly train nonetheless, because if Joe Dorber sees a gap, he is going to go for it. But of course, back to my iRacing point that I was making before it all kicked off. LMP2 and LMP3 this Thursday battle it out at the famous American Raceway. We do also have sign-ups open for the iRacing Formula 3 at Donington. That's on December 14th. That's 45 minutes of open wheel racing there. So get your names down for that one, because that is going to be some exciting stuff to see. Formula 3's always raced very well, and especially at British tracks, leads itself to some excellent racing there. Nico Kumpu getting a little bit held up, it looks like, by the car ahead. That's allowed Andy Boardman to close the gap up, but Joe Dorber still sticks with him, and all Nico Kumpu's faith right now is going to be in Dorber trying to pull off a move on Boardman. Of course, he's got the slipstream. Look at Nico Kumpu there, swerving to the inside, Jesse, through the Hatzenbach Bogan. He's trying to break the toe that Boardman is, of course, picking up, but with him, of course, Dorber will be getting the same amount of toe, followed by Menes Rodriguez. And look at all the different lines through the Vidal chicane. Dorber with a wiggle, although that's going to open the door for Menes Rodriguez. There's contact into the Coca-Cola Cup, avoids the pit wall end. We've seen so many cars end themselves on the Armco. Dorber gets it back under control. Buckets of time lost. He goes back behind Menes Rodriguez, and that's going to allow the Sim Brothers car closer to Boardman. But Menes Rodriguez is waiting, and probably a bit of an ambitious dive, I would say, Jesse, into the last corner. Menes Rodriguez for Sim Brothers admits fault, I would say, pulls over on the start-finish straight and allows Dorber through, but detrimental because they've now lost the back of Boardman, and Boardman is going to now have free reign on his teammate Nico Kumpu at the helm. Let's have a race replay, Jesse.
Let's take a look here. Menes Rodriguez looks to the outside. He goes up the inside, and maybe the gap was always going to close there. Joe Dauber does an excellent job keeping it out of the wall. He had to have full lock to the left. Nobody else hits him. And I thought Menes Rodriguez was disappearing up the road. I thought initially that Rodriguez was saying, look, that's on Dauber for maybe moving over. But no, that wasn't what was happening. Rodriguez was just trying to get clear and get to a safer place to give the spot back. You got to admire that out of the Sim Brothers 464 car. But, oh my goodness, more close racing here with one of the back markers in the race. I believe that was Jack Mays. That was quite close racing there. Slowed Dauber down. Dauber back up to P3. Menes Rodriguez in fourth, though now there's some 4.5 to 5 seconds off of Kumpu and Boardman. No movement between those, and you wonder how much damage Dauber has. It shouldn't be too noticeable, but still, it might be some, and certainly lit those tires up, and that will not help the grip and the adhesion here in the late going. It was calm for a while, but it's all changed again here in the race. More stewarding inquiries have been dealt to me. McKenna McConnell handing the slips of paper, as she always is on a Monday these days. No further action for a lap 3 turn 12 incident involving the 731 and the 31 itself. Just deemed it NFA. The 731 turns into the 31. A little bit of contact. No further action. Racing incident on lap 5 turn 3 between the 1 and the 21. Minor contact. No position gained. A warning given to car 197 on lap 7 turn 2 for braking late. Takes avoiding action but still makes contact. Position return. This was a warning, but due to them already having a warning, it's converted into a 5-second penalty. So that's why they have 10 seconds worth of penalties. They had 5 from an earlier dive, and a warning for this one, but that was converted into a 5 because of the second warning. No further action on lap 8 between the 555 and another car for minor contact. A 15-second penalty for car number 6 for a takeout position return versus the car 11. That on lap 8, turn 8. A warning given for car 11 in that same incident for an unsafe rejoin after the incident occurred. No further action for minor contact with the 555 on lap 8. A warning for car 30 on lap 8, turn 17. Car number 30 goes for a move on the inside a bit too late, sends the 555 off the track. The 30 doesn't lose a spot. The 555 loses 1. That warranted a warning for the 30 there. Warning for car 13 for initial contact. No further action. Not holding brakes after contact, though. Got the number 13 a warning. That was on lap 15. Racing incident between the 31 and the 25 on lap 17. A drive-through penalty. Takeout position not returned. That was the 95 and the 30. Unknown which driver got the drive-through penalty, but I believe it's quite clear on the screen. Racing incident between the 25 and the 31 on lap 19. We saw that back and forth. Racing incident between the 225 and the 30, also on lap 19.
Say the 30 was the car picking up the drive-through in that steward report, Jesse, and that was Carlos Calatayud. Very unfortunate, making his way up to P11 at the moment. He'll have to trundle down pit lane and lose a heap of time. Jordan Daly, of course, with 10 seconds to his name. The next car behind, Ted Edwards, 8.1 seconds to the good. So Daly's got to pull out basically 2 seconds or so in the next 14 minutes on Ted, and if he does so and catches Snooty by 2 seconds, that could be another position nearly gained had it not been for the penalty there. Meanwhile, Menez Rodriguez and Joe Dorber still locked together. This is essentially for the bottom step of the podium, P3. It could have been for P2 had they still been with Andy Boardman, although a collision threw that one to the water. Just over 14 minutes to go. Sun is setting very nicely here at the Nurburgring. Of course, 20 degrees in the air, 21 degrees down on the track. So Pirelli should be nice and happy should the drivers be able to get them into the temperature window that they need to. And hopefully the drivers have accounted for the fact it will get cooler throughout the race and run those brake ducts maybe a little bit narrower than usual. But cars navigating their way up through the Schumacher S's, of course, it's a bit of a tricky passing place to get near. You've got to really kind of make use of the slipstream and try and figure out where your rival is slower than you, but plenty of curb being taken by Joe Dorber on the inside, not so much being taken by Menez Rodriguez, but everybody equaling out nicely as they begin the run down to the Hatzbach Bogan. And just ahead, of course, the leaders, that is Nico Kumpu and Joe Dorber heading into the Vidal chicane. They're still, Nico Kumpu and Andy Boardman heading towards the Vidal chicane. It's getting dicey again, isn't it, Jesse? Menez Rodriguez just looks much more confident on the brakes than Joe Dorber does. And Joe Dorber's going to be watching his mirrors very intently for the next 13 minutes.
Ooh, that was a little bit too close for comfort for me right there. I thought Menez Rodriguez was going to go right into the back of Dauber. Again, that didn't happen. I think Dauber cut that chicane in self-defense is what happened there. I think was looking out the mirror, as you will do when you're in a fight, and saw the missile that was Sim Brothers Racing and decided to get out of Dodge. And who knows, maybe that was the difference in it. Maybe Menez Rodriguez would have been clear either way, but no contact there as far as I could tell. Just an absolutely terrifying moment for the time being. Lap 19, turn 17 incident coming through. A warning given to car 464 for avoidable contact on Joe Dauber. So that's the two cars we're watching right here. That incident deemed avoidable contact, or at least one of the incidents therein deemed avoidable contact. So stewards certainly busy here on the final day of the season. 12 minutes left to go. Looking like Boardman and Ted Edwards are going to be your champions, but they're not all the way home yet. They've still got to complete these final 6 or so laps and get the cars across the line. So not giving out the hardware quite just yet. Just want to take this time, though, to thank all of you, whether you've been here for 5 minutes or all of the minutes of these races in the championship. We thank you so much. We hope that you've enjoyed this series as much as John, myself, and Ash have had bringing it to you, of course. And we appreciate the donations, the messages, the gift memberships, all the stuff that you've done, you're chiming in of your comments. We love to see what people think, and we love to see the interaction here on the channel. Now, this, as far as I'm aware, and the reason I'm saying all this is the last Monday championship race on RCI this year. I think we're going to take the rest of the month off from ACC on Monday and come back fresh in 2024. Now, I've picked my wording very specifically here, folks at home. Try to listen to what I'm saying. This is the last ACC championship race on Monday this year. And I'm saying that because I'm covering my bases, because who knows, we might have some other racing content on Monday in the future before the year's end. But what a year it's been, John, and I can only reflect on all the different championships we've done here on Monday, you and I. The Porsche Cup Championship, a return to the Porsche Cup, was absolutely fantastic. I think the second season of Ginetta Cup has been brilliant as well. And that's not counting all of the other crazy stuff that Tim Ireland has cooked up this season. So big thank you to him, who is the event manager on the season, the live stewards, of course. Huge thank you to them for giving up a little bit of their Monday evening to come make sure the race is done in a fair and safe manner. And a big thank you to you too, partner, and you, Ash, as well, joining us broadcasting the races, and Stewie for doing the broadcasting earlier on in the season. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been a great 2023 here at RCI, and of course looking back on the events we participated in, not only together but also on our own. Of course, we've had World Tour that comes to a helm this Saturday on RCI TV. That's on Twitch and YouTube this coming Saturday. Watkins Glen plays host to the final round. Of course, earlier on in the year, we had some big names here at RCI duking it out for a massive prize pool when we took it on our first esports themed event as well, getting of course some big names in there, Williams to name a few. Of course, West Competition Racing showed up with a good few entries as well. It's been a great journey this year in 2023, and I can only assume 2024 will bring some excellent things as well. And of course, like you say, the ACC events on Monday are rounding up, but if you are in our Discord, you would have had a interesting ping yesterday at midnight, I believe. Sign-ups open for this one, as we see Callum Kerrigan going side by side with Bren Jones. Of course, Jones with a 15-second penalty, and so this fight's almost null and void at the moment. This is purely for entertainment, as Kerrigan goes to the inside. Of course, Jones will be 15 seconds back come the checkered flag, so he might even lose a position out to Pavel, just 4.4 seconds behind as well, finishing in P28. So Kerrigan's just got to kind of keep within earshot of Jones. Really doesn't really have to risk a lot. Even if Jones goes for a desperate dive, just kind of let him back through and just follow him for the next 7 minutes or so until the checkered flag. But you would have had a very interesting ping in the Discord yesterday at about midnight when signups did open for Tim Ireland's new event on Monday. This is, of course, a one-off event next Monday, so that's December 11th. We're, of course, going to head to the Nordschleife, of course, getting us ready for the Assetto Corsa Competizione release. We're running a 1-hour event with GT3 cars. Some things to note for this one: if you are new to AMS2 and you're listening or you're watching this back at the moment, there is mixed weather. Tim's run a good few races, and parts of the track get wet, parts of the track stay dry, and we're being told that dry tyres on a wet track are not as good as you think they are. If you're coming from ACC especially, we've seen how long you can run a dry tyre sometimes in wet conditions, and the new expose of wet tyres, of course, came over the weekend from another esports themed event where some clever genius found maxing out your wet pressures equals more grip in ACC. So I'm sure that'll be fixed in the next patch. But of course, getting you ready for the ACC Nordschleife GT3 takes its way around in AMS2. Of course, there's no auto wipers or headlights, so get your key bindings sorted before you do join the server.
That off?
No, it's not a thing. It's not a thing. There's no auto wipers or lights in AMS2. You have to bind the key. I'm being told not.
I mean, you could use the keyboard command and set it to automatic.
I'm just going off what Tim Ireland says.
You can't. You can set it to automatic. I mean, you have to have a binding to do it anyway, but you can set them to come. Or wait, am I confusing that with something? Maybe.
See, now we both don't know if we're right.
Now, R Factor 2 has that. Where wait, welcome to the end of the season where John and I are a bit loopy. I know in R Factor 2, you have to have it bound anyway, but you can set it to automatic. And I could have sworn that just like how traction control and stuff like that has an authentic setting that you can navigate to. I could be completely wrong on this. Tim might have me here, and you might be right. But I could have sworn, I would have bet you actual money that there is an automatic setting, but there may not be, now that I think about it. I could be remembering the original Automobilista that had a similar thing in it. So could be completely wrong on that one there. But either way, do bind it, because it is quite useful for the love of all that is holy. Ash Bibby celebrating the end of the Ginetta season and end of the ACC season here on Monday with a gift membership. Cormac Malloy, we know that guy, has just been gifted a membership by Ash Bibby. Cormac, when you see this back, just throw Ash a DM. Say thanks. And, of course, a huge thank you to Ash Bibby, who has been with us. And he's been in our ears this whole season, and he's been a part of the broadcast in more than one way. He's been incredibly generous, and he's kept us on track here in the booth as well. He really cracks that whip. He's really good at it. I'm into it, as it turns out. And beyond that, just an incredibly generous human being with his time, with his wallet, everything. Ash, thank you so much for everything that you do for us here as well. So AMS2, I've been wanting to talk about that for a long time. I've hinted at it in several broadcasts that iRacing and WRC and ACC weren't the only races or only series that we were going to have, but I couldn't tell you, even though I was privy to it. But now it's been officially announced. AMS2 content here in RCI and RCI TV. You want more information, join the Discord. Go to racerci.com. Check out all the pertinent information. Get on the track. You're going to want to be there. And maybe next Monday, maybe we'll have a live stream of it. Can't promise that, but we shall see. One car desperate to get out of the way here. I didn't catch the number on that car. It starts with a 2, though.
Callum Kerrigan.
That's Callum Kerrigan getting out of the way. I think this doesn't want to be a part of somebody else's battle, being on a different lap here tonight. Closing moments of the race, closing moments of the championship. This man doesn't know he's been gifted a membership. He's too busy racing right now. He'll figure it out eventually. He's a smart kid. But, John, if you had to pick a moment, I like to do this at the end of every champ. If you had to pick a moment from this championship for your favorite, what would it be?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? There's been so many good moments in the Ginetta Cup. I'm gonna throw it back probably to round 1, I would say, Jesse, where we had quite a number of people. We had 36 Ginettas piling round Misano, and it's a great circuit for GT3 in general, let alone GT4, of course, with the really flat curves. It's great to sling those cars around. And then, of course, the momentum then went forward to the next round. That was at Kyalami, where, again, we had some superb numbers show up for that one. And unfortunately, of course, life gets in the way. Numbers dwindle naturally at the end of the season anyway. 29 cars, of course, then rounded out the first couple, the last few rounds. But, just seeing nearly 40 cars all take to the circuit and, drivers that you don't always expect to have fights with each other, where you've got, of course, the silver guys battling pros like their life depends on it. It's, so many fantastic things have happened in the season. It's really hard to put your finger on one of them, but I enjoy just seeing sheer numbers of cars on the circuit because, we get to this stage of the championship. Again, 28 cars remain. It's, it's exciting in its own right as we see a couple of cars off. The 7-Eleven looks to be pinging a yellow flag on the circuit radar. Not sure what's happened down there, but the 7-Eleven
was that
involved
Bryn
in something.
Jones and Pavel, I wonder, that were involved here. Oh, my goodness.
Whoa.
Oh, it's a huge
That's a
crash.
big one. That's Jones and Pavel.
That is Bryn Jones.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Just got on that AstroTurf, did Pavel. Was an absolute passenger. Bryn Jones, the most unlucky human being on the track.
I think Redford nearly got involved in that one. I could be mistaken, but it looked like Redford's car just behind Jones at the time, maybe putting him a lap down. But, that could have been terrible for Redford in his final race. Currently down in P14. Again, it could have been a big loss of time there, but just managed to avoid it. Meanwhile, Mendes Rodriguez sizing up Joe Dorber. The clock is ticking. 40 seconds on the clock. The leaders have crossed the line, so it will go one more time by. 35 seconds when the race leader crosses the line. That's Nico Kumpu still, followed by Andy Boardman and Joe Dorber and Mendes Rodriguez next in line. So it all comes down, essentially, Jesse, to one final lap. Can these drivers get it done? Will there be a desperate send? Dorber's having to go defensive. Looks like Boardman's been backed up into Kumpu into turn 1. I'm not sure what Dorber's happening behind. I can't see any overlap at all. It looks like they're practically inside each other on the track map. They are this close. It's not the TV cameras playing a trick on you. They are just locked, literally splitter to diffuser here. And just look at the onboard.
Man.
You can't even see the diffuser of Joe Dorber's car, and Dorber using one of his track limits definitely there to try and escape the Mercedes arena a little bit faster than the Sim Brothers car, and that's probably built a good enough buffer. And you know, I wouldn't say it comes down to tactics, Jesse, but we do often see drivers, you know, being very conservative in the beginning half, you know, not racking up those track limits, but then when you do really need to, you know, use one in the sense of Dorber, he's definitely got a few in the pocket because he was very confident about pinning the throttle out of the Mercedes arena. And meanwhile, Snooder McFlude has hampered himself through the gravel, through the forward curve, down towards the Dunlop curve, Daly on the inside. This could be another pass, although, of course, with a 10-second penalty to Daly's name, it's not going to, you know, retain itself come the finish. But Snoody getting all kinds of squirrely through the Dunlop curve, and I can't see Jordan Daly pulling out 10 seconds to Snooty
well,
McFlude.
maybe Snooty's
who
tires
knows?
are gone off that car. Something I thought it was just because they got into the marbles, did Snooty McFlude. I don't think that's the case at all. I think those tires are gone, completely sideways now, as Daly lengthens the gap. You know, the fight between Kumpu and Boardman, I just can't see Boardman making up that position or even attempting it. I could see Menez Rodriguez making one last dive on Joe Dauber. Nico Kumpu for Rebound Racing did everything he possibly could today to make it close. He's going to win the race, but Andy Boardman's going to win the war. He comes home P2 and wins the championship.
Yeah, very good good race there from the both of them at the front. Very clean. You know, it was tit for tat at times, and you know, fair is fair, and Joe Dorber comes across the line in third, followed by Menes Rodriguez in fourth, Victor Nordquist and Christian Lindgren for Sim Brothers in fifth and sixth, Jordan Daly P7, although a 10-second penalty, and Ted Edwards, or Thomas Edwards, should we say, of course, your silver winner for tonight here at the Nurburgring, and that's going to cement his championship victory, I would say, as well. Snooder McFlude in 8th, greatest last name in sim racing in 10th, Jeff Gordon in 11th, Ross Cam in 12th, Les Stevenson in 13th, Mike Redford in P14, and Carlos Calatayud, after starting from the back, P15. Matthias Bayron, again, it hasn't been his round or really his season so far for the Sim Brothers entry, but showing up nonetheless and seeing it all the way through the hour mark towards the checkered flag. Fantastic stuff from him. Mark Martin, again, Jeff Gordon's co-part, should we say, at the Kaiju Racing Camp. It's fantastic to see drivers getting in the meme of things, shall we say, here at RCI TV. Of course, christening Phil Roberts, Jeff Gordon from the very early days of the championship. He'll come through in P17. Frederick Rude, the next step on your silver podium, followed closely by Richard Hutchins and Kevin Boss in third and fourth. And the last car across the line, that is, of course, Pavel there, with everybody else finishing somewhere in between the madness of the lap traffic. But final results on your screen at the moment. Jesse Lee, of course, Boardman takes the fastest lap as well, so a bonus point for him. And it was close all the way through. You know, Kumpu got the jump on him. He managed to fend him off. Boardman got swallowed up a little bit by the train behind, but managed to draw himself out of it and just kept Kumpu honest for the hour. You know, no late moves, no desperate, over-aggressive driving. Boardman knew exactly what he needed to do today, and that was just take away a solid points haul in comparison to Nico.
Boardman drove like a champion today. It's not all about the glory. It's not all about winning. It's about what you do in the space between. Whenever you don't have the qualifying that you would like to have, or maybe you don't have the race, or it doesn't go your way, it's about what you make out of those days that's important. And today was not a bad day for Andy Boardman by any stretch, but just getting involved with Kumpu was more trouble than it was worth. He realized that. He knew his position in the championship, what was at stake, and knew all he had to do was get the car home in a podium spot, guaranteed the championship. And this is the first championship that we've done in quite some time here on RCI TV where we know the outcome. We don't have to go back to a count back on points. We know that Andy Boardman's won pro. We know that Ted Edwards, or Thomas Edwards, has won in the silver class, and that is all she wrote for this championship. It was feisty right down to the last. We started with nearly 40 cars. We ended with 29. taking the green flag here today. And it was very close to begin with, and it was very close here. By the way, I asked you what your favorite moment was from the championship. I'll tell you what mine was. All a back and forth at Watkins Glen, I believe it was, where we were at. It was indeed Watkins Glen. The middle race was just absolutely incredible. Well, I'll tell you somebody else that's incredible. It's your silver champion, Ted Edwards, who joins us live. Ted Edwards, fresh out of the car. Easy win in the end.
Unfortunately, it was an easy win. I was hoping to have a fight, at least, with Malcolm or even Kerrigan, but I'm not sure what happened. I did see Malcolm was yellow flagged at turn 1, and Kerrigan, I think, hit Daly at
The
some point.
same, actually.
But, oh, was it? Oh, that's a shame. But yeah, well, I wanted to fight. I had to fight Redford, so it was fun.
How hard were you fighting Redford? Because we always have this internal debate up here in the booth about how hard, considering you're two different classes, and it is for a top 10 spot after all. How hard do you fight a car not in your class, knowing how much you have to lose?
Quite a bit. I was sort of chilling out, and then me and Redford were similar on pace, and I could get past him. But I decided that it was too difficult to just send it on him. I think Les had a bad run, so he let me through. So I sort of just, Les dropped off, so I was just like, I'll just chill behind Redford. I know Redford goes long anyway, like longer into the pit window, so I was just like, I'm going to pit soon. So I just chilled out a little bit after sort of demolishing my rear tyres a little bit on the curve, so it was fun though.
How's it feel, Ted? Has it sunk in? You have won this championship. I know, talking to you over the past week, you've been super focused and just sort of wanting to get to this moment, wanting to get it over with. You knew how close it was, but you walk away the ultimate champion. Has it sunk in? How do you feel?
It has sunk in, but I feel better now than I did this morning when I was worrying that I was gonna mess up the race completely. I was expecting to not qualify well and probably either take someone out and get a massive penalty or get taken out, because this track's hard. Like, obviously people at home have seen more than I have, but I've seen the yellow flags and heard them through crew chief. But it's not an easy track, especially when you're all in the same car. But yeah, I'm glad it's over.
Well, Matthew Malcolm has joined us in chat to congratulate Ted. Callum Kerrigan says, "Hi, Ted, big fan." I love that. It's your competitors showing you some of that respect, and I mean, it was a good fight throughout with the three of you, you have to say, and it definitely came down to it in the finale. Ted, I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everybody. Anybody you would like to thank. Now, keep in mind, Katrina, your partner, has been in chat cheering you on this whole time. Be very careful about what you say.
I don't need to be very careful because the first person would be her, just for being there and not talking to her friends when I'm racing, which is a nice thing to do. I don't ask her to; she does that all on her own. But yeah, she gives me support and she just keeps me updated with if I have a penalty or a warning or anything like that. But she's always supporting me. Daly is another person. Just he helps me in the race as well as before. Tonight, a few times tonight, he told me to shut up and get on with the race. Because I had the pros catching me behind. And he just said, "Just shut up. You got like 10 minutes." I was like, "Oh, I did." But yeah. Obviously, you guys and the staff, obviously, with the stewards, we wouldn't have live stewarding, and it would be a totally different outcome after the race, especially if people don't report. And obviously, obviously, you guys, the commentators and the broadcasters, people at home wouldn't see this. Oh, and I got to give a shout out to Go Setups. I don't think I would have done well if I didn't have one of them.
Let's go. By the way, your partner has literally died of cringe in chat. I don't know why she's done that, but she has. Malcolm lamenting that maybe if they wouldn't have had the incident, it'd have been a little bit closer. Malcolm wanted to give it a go, and I think we may still yet see the show, the Kerrigan Edwards Malcolm show in the future. But for right now, ladies and gentlemen, your winner of the silver class for Ginetta season 2 here on Monday, Ted or Thomas Edwards. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, huge congrats there to Ted Edwards, of course, on his victory in the silver class. And we do have the standings in the wing waiting with Ash Bibby. We do have all the results drawn very nicely indeed. And here they come at you, of course, Andy Boardman, your pro champion at the moment. 307 points. What a commanding lead that was in the end. Nico Kumpu, closest man to him, 274. And Joe Dorber, Rebound Racing, locking out 2 of the 3 top steps with 212. Good gaggle of Sim Brothers racing cars. 181 for Menez Rodriguez, 178 for Christian Lindgren, and of course Victor Nordquist on 158. Snooder McFlude in the ugly sweater Ginetta with 143, tied with Jeff Gordon on 143 as well. Bjorn Walerius unfortunately didn't finish the last race tonight on 136, and the greatest last name in sim racing on 128. Moving on to page 2, of course, Tom Shipston on 115. Another Rebound Racing entry there with 107 to Thibaut Roskam's name. Mike Redford on 100, square on the nose. Very satisfying points haul, that one. And Les Stevenson on 95. Mark Martin, or should we say Aaron Jackson, on 87, and Dale Earnhardt Sr., aka Grim Lilith, on 85. Miguel Martins on 81 and Raphael Huell on 77. Jordan Daly on 59 and Matthias Byron on 57 points. Rounds out your top 20. And running on to the final page, Billy Octane with 35 and Carlos Calatayud on 34. Everyone else, unfortunately, signed out in the mid-season and took no further part in scoring. And now coming on to, of course, the silver honours. We spoke to him just then. It is Ted Thomas Edwards on 299 points. Callum Kerrigan, unfortunately, last round just was not to be on 254, and Richard Hutchins on 213. Matthew Malcolm just missed out on the bottom step of the podium on 208, with our very own event admin Tim Ireland on 199 points. Bren Jones on 180, followed by Kevin Boss on 178, who was absent from 2 rounds from memory serves me correctly. Livu Pavel on 127, Frederick Rude on 98, and Cormac Malloy, the man with a gifted subscription, on 84 points. And of course, onto the second page of silver, Jack Mays lurking at the bottom on 68, and everybody else with a dash next to their name has unfortunately signed out and will take no further part. Of course, it's been a wonderful season here with the Ginettas, and of course, plenty more to come in 2023 and 2024 with us here at RCI. You can, of course, head on over to the website racerci.com, where you can check out all the events that are on the calendar at the moment. Sign up and pre-qualify at any time, given day or night. So if you find yourself not being able to sleep, why not jump in the rig and put in some pre-qualifying laps and get yourself signed up to an event. Of course, plenty of events this week. Wednesday sees our team championship heading stateside for their GT4 efforts. Thursday, of course, we go iRacing once again for a one-off event taking place at Sebring. That's LMP2s and LMP3s battling it out for an hour at the famous American Raceway. Saturday, Night Owl this week takes a break in exchange for the big one. Of course, the World Tour finale. We're heading stateside as well, much like every other event on the calendar, it seems, this week at RCI. SPH Motorsport leading GT3 Pro in dominant fashion from Odox Motorsport and RCI Esports Blue. Meanwhile, in Split 2, it's Goat Racing smooth as butter from Connexus Motorsport and dropping the Hammer Racing in third. And if you did miss it, of course, head on over to our YouTube channel, find the 24 hours of Suzuka highlight video put together by His name escapes me now. That's really embarrassing.
Frederick Gutman.
That's the one. I wanted to say Frederick Rude because I've been saying it all night, but it's not. It's another Frederick, of course. Frederick Gutman from the SPHE Motorsport camp. Thank you, Jesse, for that one. Check out his fantastic highlight reel that encapsulates kind of every aspect of the 24-hour that we did run in the World Tour. And I'd say probably expect another highlight video from him out of the last round, whether it be dedicated to SPH or a joint RCI venture once again. Of course, we discussed it briefly earlier on. Sign-ups are also open for next Monday. We do have a one-off event just to take you through to the holiday season. Automobilista 2. We're running some GT3 cars at the Nordschleife, kind of in preparation, I guess, for the ACC version dropping next year. Some things to note for this one, though. It's mixed weather, and apparently auto wipers and headlights are not a thing in AMS2. Me and Jesse had a debate earlier on. Tim has said it officially in the chat. It's not a thing, so he's prepared you for the fact you need to bind your wipers and headlights. So probably listen to Tim Ireland and not me and Jesse squabbling it out, and get yourself signed up for that one.
Definitely don't listen to me, yeah.
Don't listen to us at all. We're just here for the show on this one. Of course, you don't have to own the circuit. Only the server host has to own the circuit. You do just have to own all the cars, which I think Tim has elected an in-game car selection that is already available to everyone. So all you've got to do is basically own the base game of AMS2, jump on and have some fun next Monday. And we are in discussion for maybe a broadcast on that one, and it could be some very interesting stuff, especially with the mixed weather conditions. But I think I've just about covered everything in my notes, other, of course, than the partners for us here at RCI, of course, AK Esports, Driver61.com, Fanatec, digitalmotorsports.com, and, of course, Go Setups, all helping us here at RCI in various ways, offering you various perks along the way as well. So be sure to check them out if you think they can help you at all. All their links down below in the description, and all of our links are also down there as well, including the link to the Discord, which is the main hub for all discussion and all things ACC, iRacing, WRC, and everything in between, including generic discussion about other topics in the real world as well. But it's for the final time, of course, tonight that we do say our goodbyes from the Ginetta Cup. It's been a fantastic season 2, and I, for one, cannot wait for season 3 to become a thing. And I'm pretty sure next year we're going to return back to these cars because they do offer some fantastic racing along the way. Of course, congratulations to Andy Boardman in Pro and Ted Edwards in Silver for taking overall honours from a grueling 5 rounds with some very hard battles fought. But from myself, John Dalton, from Jesse Lee alongside me, Ash Bibby behind the cameras, and of course all of our live stewards, we'd like to thank you so much for joining us for this season. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the week, and we hope to see you another time here on RCI TV. Take care.